Welcome back to Not a Straight Line with me, Pete Daly-Dickson. This is the show that explores the non-linear journeys of artists and entrepreneurs to inspire you as you zigzag through your own non-straight line life. And this week, I'm joined by Matt Elwell. I met Matt at an Expert Empires event in London last year, which was run by his business partner, Nick James. And actually, Nick's own Not a Straight Line conversation can be heard now on his own Empire Builders podcast. But I digress. Many would know Matt as a success from a family tile business and then again as a co-owner of the Elite Closing Academy alongside Nick. But as he points out in our conversation, there's a lot of hard stuff that happens in between the lines of our non-straight line journeys. Hoping and coping through his younger years with a father diagnosed with bipolar disorder, Matt's personal esteem took many hits and he joined the family business as a self-confessed people pleaser. Matt's personal growth from that point is inspiring and humbling, and the insights he shares in this episode are grounded and actionable. I hope the conversation resonates with you as much as it did with me. Let's get to it. So as always, before we take a running jump off the diving board into this conversation, we'll just take a moment, the three of us, to close our eyes and just come into this conversation space together. Do you want to close your eyes and just breathe in deeply twice through your nose and a long exhale? Do that 2 more times into the nose. The last time. Matt Elwell, welcome to Not a Straight Line. It's fantastic to have you with us.
Thank you for having me. Looking forward to it.
So just from a chance meeting at a conference in London a couple of weeks ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago, here we are about to have really quite a deep and meaningful conversation as we explore your non-straight line journey through life. And the starting point of that conversation is the same as the starting point for every guest, which is as you look back on your life and you see a moment of particular change or high stakes or just seen particularly significant change of direction, what came to mind for you when you saw that question?
Yeah, quite a few. It's a deep, like straight in there question. So I love it. Yeah, I think there's a number of them in different decades really that sort of stand out for me. I think the big one is when I first made like a real serious investment in my business and therefore myself. When I was in my 20s, I used to have a small family business selling tiles and bathrooms in the south of Birmingham. I worked with my dad and my brother, which has its pros and cons for sure. And we rented for the first 5 years some little old cowsheds, 3 little old cowsheds. It was kind of like an Aladdin's cave. It was freezing cold in the winter. There was water coming through the ceilings when we first got it, when it was raining. It really was 3 old 270-year-old cowsheds turned into a sort of tile showroom thing at best.
Wow.
We sort of made a fist of it, and internally we invested quite a bit of time, money and energy in the showroom, and we sort of, each year we sort of grew and grew and grew and grew, and it was going really well, but we kind of plateaued, and we were paying, I can't remember the figures, 25, 30, 35 grand a year rent to somebody else. And I remember saying to my brother, this is going quite well, but really sort of the thing that's stopping us now is the environment. So we decided to invest in some land, decided to buy a piece of land at auction in London. And my dad was like dead against it. Like, honestly, my dad was born in the late 40s, 1940s, just at the end of the Second World War. And his sort of mindset for everything, Peter, was like, no, it's going to go wrong. Don't change anything. And I kind of get it now, but at the time it was quite difficult. Whereas my brother was very much like, my brother and I were going, we need to invest because we're flatlined. Long story longer, we managed to buy a piece of land, which was just 50 metres across the road, amazing, from where we were renting. And it was an old derelict garage. slammed it to the floor. We built a 6,000 square foot, 2-story showroom. This is in 2006, 2007, 2008. Things were going really well. And just before we got it over the line, the builder went bust and we had something called the credit crunch. And it was like the banks went bust. It was a really difficult time. So I remember at that period of time in my life, I was late 20s, kind of like learning on the job, if that makes sense, making lots of mistakes, but like had a big vision, and I was determined and I was a hard worker. But I remember the defining moment was we literally, end of 2009, the British economy just like literally stopped for a couple of months. Everybody just stopped buying everything. The banks went bust. And it felt to me like I was literally, and I'm loath to use this analogy, but it's the only one I can think of. It felt like I'd got a double barrel shotgun in my mouth. It was like we were about to lose everything. My dad was freaking out. The builder went bust. I was suffering with anxiety, stress. The news every day was horrific. You know, GMTV, Credit Crunch, BBC News. The banks have gone bust. The world's over. It really was bleak. And I remember the bank ringing me and saying, "Look, we've lent you hundreds of thousands of pounds. You haven't got it over the line yet. Your sales have virtually stopped. Your costs have gone through the roof. The builder's gone bust. Like, this is not going well." And I remember me and my brother sort of sitting there going, what are we going to do about this? And I think because we'd got such a big vision and because we'd invested and we were so deep into it, we only had one choice, and that was to find a way. And we sort of found a way through grit, determination. We moved towards everybody we knew, asked them questions like, who in your organisation right now, despite the credit crunch, is looking to invest in their home, looking for new bathrooms, new tiles? Like, we just went there and we traded our way through it. And it was the end of 2009, early 2010, when we sort of came through that period of time. And I remember that whole period of time was like a defining moment, really, that we were able to trade through it. We got the building finished, we opened, we started trading, we traded through the recession. And when I look back now at that period of time in my life, if I'm honest, it was absolute chaos and determination and a nightmare and amazing. And like, it was just a world of opposites.
I mean, there's no doubt that the Matt that came out of that was a very different Matt to the one that went in. But the one that went in already had to have quite a significant amount of self-belief and confidence and vision, as you said. Where did that come from?
Good question. I think, I believe that we were born with a special gift. I believe in God. I believe in a higher power. And I think, it's taken me a long time to realize that my superpower, if you like, is connection and vision with human beings, being able to see something in the future that doesn't exist in a sort of real clear, big, positive light really quickly, seeing that as the end goal and working backwards from there, using other human beings to interact to create it. So I think it was a superpower. I didn't know I had the superpower at the time. And also, like, people around me with real strength. Both my dad and my brother were completely different people to me. Also, we had some complementary traits.
And complementary strengths, presumably.
Yeah, complementary strengths. And the strength, like my brother, for example, was just like ever possibility. Like, he could only see it was going to work out well. He just couldn't see the negative. Whereas my dad could only see the negative. So on the one hand, I had like fear and procrastination and frustration in my dad. But also the undercurrent was my dad wanted us to do well. There was an undercurrent to want to succeed, but just drilled fear. It was a 1940s, 1950s thing. It was the people that from that generation were hard people, hard working people, and they were rich in spirit and community, but poor financially. And that was my dad's thing. But my brother was the complete opposite. He was just like, look, we'll just make it work. It's fine. What are you worried about? Like, go there. So I think because I got those two complete extremes, my position tended to be somewhere in the harmonious space between those two positions. And we were able to progress through.
As you reflect now, do you have a sense of how old you were when you recognized that you had that that kind of superpower? The first time you kind of realized how you were showing up in the world was kind of resonating with you in that particular way?
Really and truly, just in these last 2 years, working with an amazing man, my coach in Utah. His name's Jeff Mask, and he has helped me look back on my past and to pick out the moments that are sort of most advantageous to learn from. And first, that work was difficult. It was difficult. A lot of it actually goes back to my childhood, as it does for us all. So I think it's only been recently I've started to become more aware of the impact that I can have on others in a good way and in a not so good way. And I've only just started really to learn about it properly over the last couple of years.
It's the ironic thing about our strengths, isn't it? It's because they are our strengths. We don't think about them. We just operate in them. And often it requires that kind of outside eye, whether it's by assessment. I mean, some of the things you've been describing to me, I don't know if you've ever done the Clifton Strengths Finder assessment. The thing you're talking about there is futuristic, a ranger. Your brother almost certainly is high on positivity. These are strengths which can be behavioral strengths, which can be assessed. You mentioned your childhood there. That's often a place I like to go once we've kind of explored a pivotal time. What are your memories of your childhood? Was it just you and your brother, or do you have other siblings?
No, my eldest sister Tamar, she's a wonderful human being. She's the diversity inclusion. She's head of diversity inclusion at a big company, a big global company called the Phoenix Group, and she's a wonderful person. Great supporter. Wonderful to have around. I was the middle one of three, but we had a great childhood in many respects, but also a really difficult one in others. My dad, God bless him, he's still around now. His name's Phil. I saw him a couple of days ago for my daughter's birthday, and we get on a lot better now than we did then. But
we're not working together, Matt. Of course you are.
Right bonus. Anybody that's in a family business, just leave like immediately. But yeah, I mean, I want to share this because I think many people, I'm told that many people connect whenever I share this in a public place, whenever I'm speaking or whatever it might be, which I'm happy to do, by the way, because I think mental health is a really important part of our journey, and I think the more we talk about it, the better. But my dad has a number of labels, whether you believe in label or not. But so he's a bipolar disorder, manic depressive, a split personality disorder. His name's Phil. He's a hard working class man with a good heart, but he's raw, says it as it is. Spade's a spade, no holds barred, gloves are sweat, all that kind of stuff. But when we were kids, my dad was either in a mania, which I didn't know, I only know this now, and there was aggression and anger, everything was fast paced, high danger, high risk. Like it was actually like exhilarating at times. There's no safety. It's like, I'll just drive the car. I'd sit on his lap and drive the car when I was 5 and stuff like that, just when he was on one, And then there was a complete opposite to that, which was really depressed, really meek, crying, needed love, attention. And there just wasn't a middle ground. And, my mum, God bless her, she's a committed Christian, and she didn't show us what was going on. And I think she protected us a lot. But where my sixth sense, I think, came was each morning I had to, 5, 6, 7 years old, very quickly work out, am I going to need to get in the way of my sister so he doesn't hit her? Am I going to need to get in the way of my mum? Or will I be giving him a cuddle? And it was like that in our house. And as I say, what's weird and interesting is when I look back, I only really remember the great times, and Dad was great fun, and he was naughty, and we used to play knock door run, and he used to sign letters for all of my mates so we could not go to school, and he'd write the deputy headmaster when we were like 10, 11, 12, Terry Davis would get letters from my dad saying, oh, David can't come in today. I'm sorry. It's going to be somebody else's dad and all that. So on the one hand, I've got so many great memories, and he was in the toy trade as well. So like Christmas and birthdays, we used to get all the best cutting edge technology. We used to buy it from Hong Kong and China and all over the world, Taiwan. We used to get the best of everything. So in many respects, it was really, really exciting. And as I've done this deeper work over the last few years with my coach and with some therapy and things like that, I've started to realise that there was quite a lot of the bad traits that I pushed to one side that I'm now, looking to learn from, and sometimes, they cause my own depression, my own mental health, my own challenges for sure.
Probably won't surprise you, Matt, to hear that a lot of my guests on this podcast have talked about therapy and coaching and, all that side of things. Talk to me about your view on the importance of that. Do you see it as optional or mandatory to achieve what we are as humans are really capable of?
Well, I mean, I've thought about this a lot, and to get to where you are today, you have to have experienced what you've experienced. And I think the more we're able to look back at the experience that we experienced, that we went through, the more you start to understand who you are today. So, look, one of the big myths, mate, that I hear and see when I'm moving around is this sort of perception, or it's a myth actually, that when you've got a business, you've got staff, you're not going to have any problems. And when you're successful, whatever that means, you're not going to have any problems. And actually, I would say the opposite is true. I would say the opposite from what I experience. I think the more responsibility I see others have, the more of this element of who are we, where did we get what we've got, how do we create the characters we are, like the more of that seems to come up. And I look at leaders, I study leaders, I look at my own mentors, like all the successful people I know have had challenges, not all, but virtually everybody I can think of. It has got some colour to their past. And this podcast, the name of it,
Not a straight line.
not a straight line, yeah. Like, just the name itself says everything you need to know, doesn't it? So I think, look, scientists many years ago did a study on trying to recreate life and nature inside. So you probably know this, something like the Eden Project in Cornwall, for example. Like, it took years for scientists to realise that to create life inside, well, when they first started doing it, they forgot about the one thing. Like, the trees would grow in a straight line, and after a few years, they'd topple over because they forgot to recreate wind. Once they start to recreate wind, the little seeds in the ground, once the wind was brushing past them, going through, the roots start to have to spread and get deeper. And I think human beings are the same. If it's all swimming and nothing happens, then you just don't have deep roots. And I think it's probably the best analogy I can come up with.
It's a wonderful analogy. It's not one I've heard before. That the stresses and the strains and the difficult moments. I mean, I've heard that you grow through those challenges, but that analogy just really beautifully visualizes it and encapsulates it.
And it comes from not playing safe. I think so many of us, and certainly I go through periods. There are degrees of this. I go through periods where I play it safe too. But when I look back, I go that every time something good's happened in my life, and we could talk about the word good in a minute, but let's just say good for now. Like, anytime something that's perceived to be good has happened, there's generally been a moment of tension before it in my life. The opening question that you asked me, look back on that period of time, I could probably go on for weeks, months, if not years, about things that happened that I could learn from. And the depth to it is like a deep chasm, really. Probably a never-ending summit almost. But I look back, and it without that period of time, look, I've got 152 active clients, CEOs, business owners around the world right now. And I can't coach them or teach them or train them in the way that I can now without that experience. So I think the more you do, the more you give it a go, the more you're in the game, the more scars, the more bruises, the more cuts, but also the more experiences, the more wins, the more responsibility, the more rewards. Like, you just play it safe all the time and you sit back and wait. You go backwards, don't you? And I think there is a constant challenge internally with so many of us. And for me, I'm not a high risk taker, but I'm not a low risk taker either. I'm medium. So I'm prepared to give it a go and see what happens. And I think being curious sometimes is helpful.
When was the last time or the most recent time you recognize as significantly stepping outside your comfort zone to experience something or to achieve something?
I mean, good question. I mean, look, I don't want to sound like a cock here because I've got, I'm so flawed and I've got a long list of things I get wrong. But one of the things that I really focus on and actively work on is being able to make a case for the opposite of what I believe to be true or what I'm saying out loud. So I'm really looking to make a case for, if my mind goes, yeah, I don't think we should do that. I go, well, tell you what, why don't I just play out? Let's say my mind said, let's just do it. Let me play that out and see how it feels. It's a bit like going dress shopping, isn't it? It's like my beautiful wife, Kerry. The number of times I've been dress shopping with my wife, and the first one she puts on, I go, that one. Like, you've nailed it. Just get that one. 2 hours later, she's tried a load on, and we go back to the first one. But the point is, she's tried lots of other ones on to see if they fit, and they didn't, and she goes back to the first one. If the default pattern in the listener, you, me, right now, is, yeah, I need to have a think about it, I'm not sure, probably going to go wrong, no, I'm just going to do what I normally do. If that's the default pattern, that's okay, and it's got you this far, and I'd strongly urge others to give the opposite a try, and sometimes just opening your brain to the opposite to what you normally do. And there's loads of science on this now. There's science to back this up, left, right, and centre. Doing the opposite, sometimes just thinking about the opposite, actually can light things up. I found something out recently. I was listening to a podcast and I followed it through a little bit to double check. But we've got atoms in our body that aren't actually awake yet. So, like, if you keep just doing what you always did, you don't light anything up. You don't change. You don't do anything different. You don't experience anything. Your central nervous system, it isn't being challenged. It's called the learning zone, and the one after that's called the growth zone. So, the learning zone of what can I learn rather than what do I already know, it is a good place to be. So I'm not saying I do this all day, every day, but I do give that a go as often as I can. I look to challenge my internal beliefs as much as possible.
It's a wonderful insight. I've been hitting the mark clip button as we've been going. There's so many like nuggets and thought bombs that you've been dropping. It's amazing. Not a straight line by name, not a straight line by nature, and that's true of these conversations themselves as well as I guess live. So,
tell me how you came up with the name and the reason for the podcast.
So the name itself came from one of the iterations of my life. I was the co-founder of a digital magazine called the Small Business Owner magazine. It was on I don't remember at the time, there was the newsstand app on the iPad. And me and my business partner, we created this digital magazine called Small Business Owner magazine. There was articles and stuff, interviews with successful entrepreneurs. And there was one guy wrote an article about success or something. I don't remember what the details of the article was, but my business partner recently reminded me that I came up with the title of the article, which was "Success is not a straight line journey." I guess maybe because I came up with that, that's always stayed with me. And I've been through quite a significant period of self-reflection over the last couple of years. And for most of my life, Matt, I've regarded myself as a failure. And I put that, you put success in air quotes, and I'm putting failure in air quotes as well, because what the hell does either of those two mean? Relationships and businesses and stuff. And it was in sort of really towards the beginning of this year that I was diagnosed with ADHD. That was a huge kind of, okay, so there's a reason that I've been interacting with the world and with people in the way that I have. And as I look back on my life and all the stepping stones and experiences and relationships and skills and stuff that I've had in my life, I recognized that where I was absolutely the place to be. There was no other place that I could be other than where I was and who I was. And I fully accepted that. I knew that to get out of the work situation I was in, 14, 15-hour days, that I had to talk to people, because opportunity comes attached to people. I don't know if that saying resonates with you. I thought, well, if I want more opportunity, I need more people. And I thought the easiest way to do that is to start a podcast and start talking to people. Smart. And then I just thought, well, not a straight line is a kind of a pretty open container to have conversations with people about anything. And it's just taken a life of its own. And when I see I wake up in the morning, I know I'm going to have one of these conversations. I never have more than one a day. right there early on, I think I had 3 of these conversations in one day. And by the end of the day, I was just an absolute wreck. Yeah, because to have these kind of conversations, you have to be fully physically, emotionally, and mentally present right there. But the conversations now, it's same with anything, Matt. The more you do something, the better you get at it. I had kind of a base level experience and skill at having these conversations, but the conversations have just got deeper and richer, and so that's the story in a nutshell. Yeah.
Well done.
But talking about story though, so we're bouncing around a bit, which is great. That's what these conversations are about. I want to go back to the young Matt at school. I want to get a feel for what it was that excited him and turned him on and lit him up.
Yeah, massive sport, Billy. Loves rugby, love football, love cricket. Anything I could get a racket in my hands. And also what I realised from a very young age, I loved people. Absolutely fascinated with people, mainly men. I really was attracted to men who had some structure in their lives. So my dad didn't have structure, still doesn't to this day. I went on holiday with my family a few weeks ago. My brother 3 years ago had a brain tumour, and he's fully survived. He's running triathlons and all kinds of stuff at the minute, and he's doing great. It was something that he had hired a home in Cornwall 3 years ago for his 40th birthday, and they very kindly, while he's been recovering, held the booking. So we went a few weeks ago to Cornwall, and my parents came down, and they're both, well into their mid-70s. Dad's late 70s. They're both not well at all. They really haven't been well. We went down to the beach on the first day. We had to hobble all the way down the steep streets, and I got down to the beach, and I said to my mum and dad, they were really struggling. I went, "Where's your seats?" And the old man was like, "Seats? What are you fucking talking about? Fucking seats? What are you just going to sit on the floor? You're nearly 80. Like, my dad hadn't got, those beautiful little green and blue chairs that you can put on the beach. They just left them at home. They hadn't even thought, we're going to Cornwall with all the grandkids and kids. Like, they're probably going to want to run around on the beach, and we're probably going to want to sit there and watch them. And in the end, I had to put them on a rock. And my dad fell off, broke his rib and broke his wrist. Like, mate, it was horrific. So that's my dad, right? And that's my mum. So when we were kids, like, it was either, as I said, it was either just like mad fun, and we were all going knock door running and building bonfires and doing mad things, or there was violence and anger, and so as I grew up in my young teens, by the age of 14, 15, I was at the rugby club, I was in the pubs, and I used to stand listening to men. And what I realised actually is most men talk bollocks when they're drunk. And what I realised is that actually I didn't want to be like a lot of them, but actually being like them was quite attractive. So from the age of 15, I was in the pub, I was drinking, I was smoking. I used to smoke 40 a day when I was 15. Like, I was acting like an adult, and I was probably like well beyond my years, if that made sense. All my mates were older, all my mates were in the pubs. So I was looking for structure. I couldn't really find it. I had 2 uncles, and both of those men, one was called Clive Simmons, one was called Peter Wintermore, and both of those men actually gave me something I wasn't getting from my dad, which was some decorum and some values and some structure. And as I say, I don't want to paint my dad like he's a terrible person. He was ill, and he's a real character. But so yeah, in those early days, I was a bit of a wreck, really. Just playing lots of sport, smoking, drinking. Like, I wanted to be the front and centre of everything. I wanted to be talking to everybody. I wanted to be in the thick of everything. I wanted to listen. I wanted to learn. I wanted to earn money. When I was 11 and a half, 12, I started working on the milk round. And the milkman, Johnny Webb, again, there's a theme here. He was really disciplined, the complete opposite to my dad, complete opposite to me, really structured. And he used to pick me up at 1:15 a.m, 3 nights a week. I'd go to school the next day, and I would run 1:15 a.m. I'd sleep in mum and dad's front room. He'd knock on the window, 1:10. I was already ready. I got my black tracksuit bottoms on, my Pumas on, my New Balance trainers. I wasn't senior enough to sit up front of the float. I used to stand on the back and run. I was called the runner. So I used to run from 1:15 in the morning till 6. And then the last drop was Sylvia's Pantry, May Lane. And we used to, very last drop, 6 o'clock. And he used to say to me, "Well run, Math." He used to call me Math. "Well run, Math. Well done, son. You can have 1 bottle of anything out the fridge, and you can have 1 pasty." And I used to have a chicken tikka pasty, and a bottle of Gold Top. Do you remember the Gold Top?
Gold Top, yeah, the creamy milk, yeah.
And I'd be eating like chicken tikka. Like, this is a
6
long
o'clock
time
in
ago.
the morning.
It's the first like hot food I ever ate. Chicken tikka pasta, it wasn't hot. And a pint of milk. And I'd go back home for 20 past 6. I'd sleep till 8. Then I'd go to school and register and lie. Once I'd registered, I used to go into D block upstairs, and I'd put 2 tables together that had like a cloth hanging over the edge of it. And I used to sleep underneath there after reg till 11:30. My best mate, Chris Rumney, used to come and knock me and go, "Matt, you got to get up now." And then I'd be ready for the rest of the day. So, like, as a kid, that was kind of me. And I was a big sport Billy. I had trials at rugby, football, cricket. I loved the whole thing, But it was men with structure that I was trying to seek out the most.
What a brilliant story. Where is that desire now in your life? Do you have structure in your life?
Yeah, so I've got. It's interesting because my business partner, who I think Nick, he is very structured, amazingly disciplined in so many aspects of his life, and has a skill that I'm yet to see matched from anybody, actually, which he can sort of almost do a screening of his performance as an individual at work or at life, and pick out a weakness and turn it into a strength by learning. Like, I haven't yet managed to find out how to do that, I don't think. And he's brilliant at it. So it's interesting. If you're at an event recently, you've seen me and Nick. We look different. We are different. We sound different. We move differently. We speak differently. We make decisions differently. We've got complete opposites in virtually everything, but we've got a set of values that we're aligned on. And that's the thing that joins us. We've got 7 core values in our businesses, and I'm still attracted to that discipline and that structure that he brings to our relationship in business. And it allows me to be less structured and more creative and more free, if that makes sense. It's not perfect. There's pros and cons,
How did you meet? And how did you meet? And how did you get to the point of being in business together?
Well, in 2017, I decided to sell my shares in my family business, and my brother bought me out of our trading company, the tile and bathroom bit.
Why did you want to leave?
A few reasons. I think main reason was, if I'm being really honest, that my brother and I had been in the past sort of moving towards the same vision, and we were both on the same track, which I haven't shared this yet, but when we bought that piece of land all them years ago, and we built a 6,000 square foot 2-story showroom and managed to trade through the recession, one of the other things that we managed to do was, many years before that, I'd cold called Tesco and a few others, big chains, Sainsbury's, these kind of people. And we'd entered into a long-term negotiation, discussions actually with Tesco, to rent the part of the building off us. And in 2012, we signed a 20-year contract with them, and they took over 2/3 of the building. So we'd actually downsized our operation by 2/3. It had become a bit more profitable, and it was, really interesting business deal to deal with them. It was great. I think, if I was really honest, I was bored. I was in my mid to late 30s. The business was quite profitable. It wasn't really challenging. We'd sort of downsized by about 2/3. We used to have like sort of 12 full-time staff and loads of subcontractors. And then when we did the deal with Tesco, we sort of reduced it. And I just don't think there was enough space for 2 fairly young, ambitious entrepreneurs. Or there was, but we couldn't find a new vision that we could both attach ourselves to. Difficult period of time for sure, but I was walking to work dying inside for about 3 years. It is actually a regret. Some people say they haven't got any regrets. I'm like, really? Fair play to them. Like, I was like, I wish I'd have acted on it quicker. The problem for me, Peter, was from the outside looking in, you'd have said, these guys have got it cracked. They bought a piece of land, they took a risk, they built a really great business. They've got a really nice family business. They're doing really well. They're making good money. They've got this amazing deal with Tesco. They're sorted. And people actually used to say those words to me in the pub out loud. Things like, it's all right for you. You're a multimillionaire. You've cracked it. That was just the perception. It was completely not accurate. It just wasn't. But that was the perception for some people. Fine.
Back to the whole success in air quotes again.
Yeah, mate, it was frightening. You wouldn't believe the assumptions that people made, and you wouldn't believe the lack of awareness around, like being an entrepreneur, as you know, you invest, you take money, you take risks, you take a gamble. Other people think I just walked into a shop with the £50 notes and bought a piece of land outright, you know. Anyway, that was all going on, and I got a beautiful wife. I got a young family. I lived 100 meters away from the showroom. I walked my kids to school every morning. I played golf at the local golf club. I was the chairman of the local rugby club. We were really embedded and engaged in the local community. My wife's parents lived in the area. My parents lived in the area. Her grandparents lived in the area. My brother lived in the area. My sister wasn't far away. Like, all my best mates lived there. Like, from the outside looking in, it was tickety-boo. From the inside looking out, I was depressed, drinking too much, overeating, binge eating, addicted to sugar, addicted to just about anything that wasn't good for me, apart from Class A drugs, which I've never been involved with, but I'm addicted to everything else. I'd lost my motivation. I'd lost my mojo. I was overthinking. I was not a good person to be around internally. And I really didn't do a good job of owning that and being open and real and dealing with some of the things that were bugging me. And
were you masking it? Were you giving a different perception to the outside world than it was going on inside?
Absolutely. Absolutely. From the outside looking in, it was tickety-boo. Look at him. It's all right for him. He's got a business. He's got a nice house. He's got a nice car. It's all good. But yeah, what I was doing, mate, is I was blaming my dad and my brother and other people for me feeling frustrated and stuck at work. And I was blaming everybody else. I started to tolerate behaviour internally that wasn't acceptable and blaming other people. And then one day I had a massive realisation. It was when my uncle was diagnosed with a terminal brain tumour. Beautiful man, Peter Wintermore, really spiritual, beautiful man. He left South Africa in the 60s, I think it was, or maybe early 70s, as a conscientious objector. He was a South African, and he left South Africa because he was against apartheid, refused to join in with the racism and fought it, you know, but was driven out of his country. And he married my mum's sister, Auntie Jill. And 40 years later, he was a dentist. They'd created a beautiful business. After working so hard, it was time for him to retire. And just within a few months of that, he was dead. And I remember thinking to myself, my uncle, by the way, was such a beautiful person, really spiritual man, Peter. And he showed me how to live a good life. He was very disciplined. He was a sprinter, a runner, a dentist, a preacher, didn't really drink alcohol, didn't smoke. He'd have the odd glass of red wine, you know. But he also taught me how to die.
How do you mean?
Well, he believed that the next step for him was better than where he was now. And he didn't have any fear when he was dying at all. Just massive courage and, I wouldn't say excitement, but curiosity to what was going to be next. And he believed he was going to meet the Lord, and he believed that he was going to take the next step. He just had so much courage and strength and honour and integrity and dignity. He just made it so easy for us, you know. He sadly passed, and I remember thinking to myself, if this happened to me and I died quickly, I kept having like this recurring nightmare stroke vision. And all it was a vision during my sleep, a vision of people standing around a hole in the ground. And I ain't getting buried, so I don't know why that was there. But anyway, standing around a hole in the ground at my funeral, on the headstone, on the tombstone. And please don't judge me for this. I'm sharing, with funny things, human being. I'm sharing what the vision. The tombstone said, "Don't judge me. Here lies the great Matt Elwell." I mean, what the fuck does that mean? Right? Here lies the great Matt Elwell. He didn't add up to very much. And that was recurring and recurring and recurring. And I remember thinking, this is the moment. This right now is the moment where I've got to be honest with myself and with my dad and with my brother and with my wife and with the people around me. And I've got to make a choice for me and nobody else. And it was obvious that something needed to change. And my brother and I entered into some pretty detailed discussions with different options. And eventually the option was for me to walk out of that building 31st of August 2017. And I cried and laughed my way home.
400 meters of it.
Mate, It was the longest 100-odd meters I've ever had. It was numbing and exhilarating all at the same time. And that was the start of the new chapter, really. It was like a big moment in my life. And I was going to take a couple of years off and just do nothing and be. But there was like a real strong urge inside my body to share what I'd learned and how I'd come through the recession and how I'd still managed to keep a business and how I'd done the deal with my brother and Tesco. And I wanted to coach and train and consult and teach, and I just didn't know how.
I know we're coming on to how you met Nick James and started working together, but I just want to say that I resonated very strongly emotionally with when you shared what was on your tombstone, like really, really strongly. Do you remember how you felt? Because you just didn't hear it once. You were getting over and over again. I mean, two questions. Did you ever hear that from anyone like in real life as you were growing up? And how do you remember seeing that tombstone?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Very, very interesting question. And I've thought about this deeply. When my dad was in a mania at work, he would literally humiliate me in front of other people. I remember I'd been working just for a few weeks in the family business, and I didn't know anything about tiles or bathrooms, but I knew how to sell. Bottom line is, ask people some questions, find out if you're a good fit, find out if you've got a product or a solution or a service that gets a result, and if it is, and if it does, show them some options and let them ask you some more questions. And if there's no questions, let's exchange the contract. Fairly simple set skills. I remember a friend of mine came into the showroom looking for some tiles, and a great friend of mine, Graham Webb, he's sadly passed now. And he came in and he said, right, he said, I'm doing the kitchen and I'm looking for some tiles. And my old man went, I don't know what you're fucking speaking to him for. He haven't got a fucking clue about tiles. And it was just so humiliating. And that was the kind of thing, what I realised is that's not my dad's natural style, but that was when he was in a mania. That's the kind of thing he'd say. And when I was a kid, if he was in a mania, like to this day, I've still got, if a light bulb needs changing, like instantly that makes me feel uncomfortable because I go to change a light bulb and my dad would just instantly notice, change it like that, fucking give me that. And he'd do it himself. Any drilling, hammering, anything like that. And again, it feels like I'm blaming my dad. I'm not, but the experiences that I went through and how I chose to react to that was how I chose to react to it then. And I'd definitely do it differently this time, which I'd be like, hang on, I can do this, leave me to. So for sure, there was an element of wanting to people please, massive people pleaser. But the only person that ever said anything in public was my dad. Negative.
Pretty influential though.
Massively influential, yeah. But again, it took me years to realise it wasn't on my dad, it was on me. How do I choose to take the words that he's saying? And now I can go, oh, he's on a mania, like just ignore him and move on. But I wasn't developed enough as a human to deal with it. And as I say, look, I learned a big lesson. What you tolerate, you become. So, I was tolerating.
Say that again. That's profound.
What you tolerate, you become.
What does that mean?
Well, I was tolerating unacceptable behaviour. Like, it was not acceptable for my father in the showroom to speak to me like that in front of a friend. And what I did is got all upset about it internally, but didn't sit him down and go, look, Dad, I love you. And I kind of get where you're coming from. I just want to make this really clear. What you just did in there can't happen again. And here's the reason why. I didn't have that. It was much more like, we used to get into a big argument and then you have to kind of go, he's my dad. And like, I just did not deal with it properly. So I was tolerating that was just one example of behaviour that wasn't acceptable. And there were other things where other people in the organisation would do things that were not aligned with my values, but to keep the peace and to try and make it all okay. I'd be like, yeah, it's fine, don't worry about it. But deep down, that's not what I really meant. So I started to tolerate things that were not acceptable. And then I became the problem because I didn't confront in a healthy way. I didn't understand healthy conflict. I didn't have the skills to have an awkward and onward. I didn't have the understanding and self-awareness and humility to realise that the way I was flying off the handle was creating a problem. And to this day, I still have to work on that. So, like, to fast forward to where we were eventually when I left, I was going to take a few years off. After a few weeks, I did take some time off. I went and spent some time on my friend's boat in Spain, which was wonderful. It's amazing how people, almost like angels in many ways, to me, I almost feel there's an angelic aspect to this. But a friend of mine who I knew distantly saw something I'd posted on Facebook. He was going through a divorce and he became like an angel for me just for a few weeks. He was like, why don't you just come to Spain? Fucking yes. That's what I need. I need to be with someone I don't really know, who doesn't know me, doesn't know my dad, doesn't know my brother, doesn't know anything that's going on, where I can just chew the fat, offload if I want to, talk if I want to.
Just be.
Just to be. Like, I just needed, my central nervous system just needed to go,
Calm the fuck down.
fucking hell, what was that? 16 years of madness. What was that all about? And of course, we'd walked away with the 16 years with this amazing sort of deal with Tesco. So it was bittersweet and sweet and bitter and all of those things. So I had a few weeks, some time in Spain. I had a few weeks off. Anyway, the one morning, 4th of October, 2017, I remember coming down the bottom of the stairs going, I am going to start a new company today. And the only vision I'd got was a vision. It's like vision first, mechanic second. Like the vision was, I'm just going to consult businesses about how to grow and scale and communicate with their teams and sell. That was it. That was the vision. I didn't know how. I hadn't got a website. I hadn't got a business card. I didn't know what a fucking funnel was. Like, I didn't have any of that. I just had a vision. Again, vision. Just, I am going to teach people. That was it. As good as I got. And initially it was like the SME space, small to medium-sized enterprises, family businesses. I can help them. That was my vision, really. And so the first thing I did, I was like, well, why don't I do what I'm great at and connect with people that I already know in business that might possibly know someone that might possibly need a consultant like me? That was about as good as he got. So I wrote a list down and I wrote 24 names down. And the first name was my sister, Tamar Hughes. The second name was my first proper boss, David Hodgson. The third name was a guy I used to play rugby with, Lee Wainwright. The fourth name was a guy called Nick James, who I knew his granddad. I knew him from the golf club. He'd been at my stag do. We were friends of friends. He was in the events and mentoring space. And it went all the way down. So I thought, well, I'm just going to cold call person number one, who's my sister. So I cold called my sister, Tamar Hughes, and I was like, hey sis, how you doing? And she was like, she'd been really helpful with helping me manage the big change of leaving the family business. And she goes, I said, she goes, is everything all right? I'm like, yeah, fine. You don't normally ring me in the day. And I said, look, I've decided I want to sort of start a business up. And I was wondering, who do you know right now that might be interested in having some consultation with me? And she was like, no one really. And I was like, well, if there was one person, who would it be? And she's like, oh, good question. And she said, I'll tell you what, I've got she got a big training and development budget, right? And she said, look, I can't remember the exact circumstances, but she said, I've got a tiny bit of budget left for a training course, and I've actually got nobody to go on it, right? So I've got a bit of budget left. If you promise me you'll go, she said, I'm going to pay for you, as long as you don't tell anyone. I hope her boss isn't listening to this podcast. But she goes, I'll send you on a business coaching course to a man that I really respect. The man was called Andy Gilbert. His name is Andy Gilbert. Great man, brilliant man.
Know the name.
You heard of him, yeah. He's written some amazing books. If you're an individual and you are the listener right here, right now, and you're into business coaching, mindset, excellency, great, check out Andy Gilbert. He taught me something called possibility thinking. Amazing skill. Anyway, so I went to this training, and on the fourth day of 4 amazing coaching days, we were given one task, and the task was to take one action, whatever action it is, just take one action as you leave the building. Like within a few minutes of leave, you got to take an action. So I got in my car, I turned my phone on, and that morning, for the first time ever, I'd actually done my first ever Facebook check-in. Like, I didn't really do technology, and I sort of did a photo, and I put Matt Elwell is at Go Mad, and that was the company called Go Mad. It stands for Make a Difference Business Coaching. So Matt Elwell is at Go Mad. It's my first ever post. Turn my phone off at 9 o'clock in the morning. Get into my car at 5 o'clock at night with, I'm going to take one action. And my action was, I'm going to ring person number 4 on my list, Nick James.
Why? Why number 4? What happened to the other 3?
Well, I'd already rang my sister.
Yeah.
I'd already rang David Hodgson, and I'd already rang Lee Wainwright. So I'd already done the first 3.
Okay, you've done the first 3. Okay, right.
Yeah.
Got it.
Sorry, I should have told you that. I hadn't done number 4. And the reason why I hadn't done number 4 is because I'd been overthinking it and procrastinating a little bit. And, nothing had really landed. And also with Nick's stuff, I was intrigued, and I'd also got a bit of resistance to it initially.
What do you mean by that? Resistance to what? How did that manifest?
I've been watching him on Facebook. I've been watching him on his Facebook Lives, on Instagram. And I was intrigued by what I was hearing. And I was reading, I was in his funnel hack team. I was reading some of his emails and stuff like that. But it was all new to me, and I got some resistance to it. It was a new style. So I wasn't sure about it, but I was intrigued.
I'm curious what form that resistance took.
Yeah, I think just some internal resistance around his approach to marketing and sales. I felt like it was a bit American at the time. And it was. I now know it was. He'd learned from some American companies who are actually really great people with high values and high integrity. But it was all new to me. So I was resisting what was new. Nowadays, I've been more curious to that resistance, but then I was still quite a closed person. Very much. Look, I'm closed now, but I'm not as closed as I was. So I've got a bit of resistance. I've got resistance to Facebook. I've never done a check-in, so I hadn't rang number 4. So I decided my action was going to be ring number 4, Nick James, right? So as I turned my phone on, when you start getting the bit of all the stuff on your phone, first thing I see is a message from Nick James. First thing I see. And it says, "What the fuck are you doing at Andy Gilbert's training? Andy used to be a client of mine. Why aren't you in the tile business? What's happened?" That was what the message said. So it was like a sign, like bang, sign. And within a few days, I'd met Nick, had a beer with him, and he was my very first customer. I went actually for free and did 4 hours of sales training with his team. 2 of his team left that night, and the other 2 were like, "Who is this guy?" 3 weeks later, we tripled his conversion rate, and like he had just got like a bank of opportunities that just needed closing, which was my skill set, and it bang, 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 and he's never got rid of me since. That was 7 years ago. Yeah.
What an incredible story. Have you shared that story before?
Many times.
Many times, yeah. What an amazing story. Thank you for sharing it here. You talked about structure earlier. Did you see that at the time, and that was part of your attraction to him and working together?
Well, no, I didn't know the man then. But when I met him, it was obvious to me that he got some very attractive traits, highly ambitious, highly motivated, great work ethic, massive visionary, risk taker, fast paced, emotionally intelligent, fast, really fast, and I can be quite slow at times, so that kind of is quite attractive to me in some ways. So yeah, there was obvious traits, and he was seeing things and hearing things from me that he hadn't seen before. In this word is just such an awful word. It's the only word I can think of, and it's not about the human being, but the word is like a standard salesperson. A 7 out of 10 salesperson. I'm not making that wrong, but like that was not me. I was just operating on a different vibe. I was just like all in. I wanted something new. I wanted it. I was 24/7. Give it to me. Give me the opportunity. I want to demonstrate that. I was just in that vibe, So I felt free and released, to be honest. So our galaxies just collided, and then there's this massive explosion, and it's been a wild journey ever since, really.
It's still quite a step, though, from consulting with someone and achieving great results for them to actually going into business together.
Yeah.
Bearing in mind that you've just exited a business partnership. What was going on in your mind in terms of that, and how did that actually come about in terms of you forming a business together?
Well, we tried things that didn't work as a partnership, and we just couldn't land on something that felt fair for both of us. So when I first started doing it for Nick, a lot of Nick's peer group, he's a big believer in peer group and mastermind programs and having, mentors around him. And a lot of his peer group noticed that his business was taking a sort of literal north, rocket fueled, accelerated, like he was going that way.
Hockey stick kind of growth.
Oh, just like boom, just took off. I am not saying it was me in any way, shape, or form. What I'm saying is that the bit that Nick was looking for, which was, look, Nick's an amazing marketer amongst many things. So he had a pipeline just full of people that wanted to do business with him. And he had a sales team that were really good, like client experience and talking and all that lovely stuff. But they weren't closing the contracts. And that's bang. That's what I was great at. That's how I traded through the recession. That's how I got through, that's how I got through Credit Crunch, and that's how I did the deal with Tesco and all of that stuff. So to me, it was just like, right, we just got to find the ones that are ready to do business and elegantly close them into the thing that's going to help them the most, or not, and take them out the pipeline. Or we need to be more progressive. And it just bang, it was like a dam breaking. It's one of them, right? So of course, Nick's peer group started to say to Nick, well, who's this bloke? Like, and Nick's going on, and you don't want to know about him, kind of thing. and then of course I'm starting to get a bit greedy, going, well, hang on a minute, like if people want me that much, I want some more money. And I started to make money that I'd never made before in my career. Opportunities started to come my way, and honestly, when I started my consultancy business, which I've still got now, it's a little coaching business that I still do a little bit of private coaching where I want to. The Elite Closing Academy is like my core business, but I've got my own clients if I want to, when I want to. I pick people I want to work with just quietly in the background. So it's still there. And my driver was not money. It was one of the drivers, but I didn't start this company specifically just to make loads of money. I really wanted to find a way of getting out my experiences and helping others. It's right aligned with my true self, my desire to want to serve others, to connect with others, to see others thrive. That's all part of my core personality, and that they were key drivers for me. Also, some of the key drivers were to be free and to be a decision maker on my own, and not have a business partner and not have to think about other people. So they were big drivers for me. And also not working 24/7 was a key driver. I wanted to have less time at work when I first started doing it. So when the money started to pour in as well, pretty quickly as a consultant for Nick, like real great sums of money, it sort of was really, really exciting. And then lots of other people started to want to work with me. And I was able to sort of charge fees that were unfathomable in the past. And that definitely does something to you when you're in demand, when your service is in demand. It was a new feeling for me. It was like, wow, I'm getting really well remunerated to teach people what I already know. That was just new. That was just really new for me. So lots of opportunities, Peter, started to come my way. Then the traveling, getting on planes and trains and automobiles. I was coaching in Switzerland. I was coaching in Europe. I was traveling to America with Nick, these amazing events. I was in London, Manchester. Like, my whole world just completely changed back like that. Nick was like, look, this is going amazingly well. And at the same time, you are making a real serious amount of money as a consultant. And I'm, as the CEO, going, one sec, we need to try and formalise something here, structure. We need to try and get some structure around this. And it was exhilarating, but it was pretty exhausting as well. I've got a young family. I've got two beautiful little girls, Olivia and Eva, just celebrated their 15th and 11th birthdays. And I wanted to be with the family, but all of a sudden I'm away and I'm on planes and hotels. And so eventually Nick and I settled with a series of offers. And the first offer that he made me was to become his head of sales. And for about 12 weeks, I became head of sales. And I absolutely hated it. Like, he hated it, I hated it. He was like, fuck, this is horrible. I don't want to work for somebody else. It was, and I don't blame him, by the way. As the CEO, he looked to recruit me. And after a few weeks, we both looked at each other and went, no, this is not the thing, is it? And then we tested a few others. But eventually we decided to create a training company called the Elite Closing Academy. And we started that company in August 2018. With sort of bi-monthly trainings, and people used to fly. Our training centre, as you probably know, is right next to Birmingham International Airport. And before COVID, people would fly in from as far as America, Philadelphia, as far as They travel for the training with me, with my team, on really my framework around negotiation and selling and communicating. And we're in year 7 now.
Are you involved in Expert Empires, or is Expert Empires is Nick's company, Elite Closing Academy is your company?
Nick and I are 50-50 in the Elite Closing Academy, and Expert Empires, he owns himself. I do a little bit of coaching for Expert Empires, so I do a bit of coaching in his mastermind programs. We share 21 staff, so I coach all of the sales team on both businesses. So there's some intertwined, partnerships and some consultation still, but Expert Empires is not my business.
I love the sense of exploration and experimentation that you and Nick went into. You knew that you wanted to work together, but you just weren't sure how. And there's a really important lesson there, I think, for me and the listener. Not to be closed-minded about possibility. But you talked about possibility thinking earlier on. Perhaps that's part of it.
Well, as we speak, we're going through probably our 5th or 6th, what you would call makeover. Our relationship, we look at the financial terms of the relationship regularly, at least annually. We look at the pros and cons. Is it still fair for him? Is it still fair for me? Look, we've got 3 guiding principles with all the things that we do. Principle number 1 between Nick and I is that our friendship off the pitch, so to speak, away from work, isn't affected by any business decision we make, and that our wives and children get on really well. We're close friends, and Kerry and Nat see each other quite a lot. And my girls and his boys, he's got 2 boys, Ty and Zach, and they're same age as Olivia and Eva, and they get on like a house on fire. We go out for dinners together and stuff like that. So guiding principle number 1 is no matter what we decide to do in business, hopefully it'll be like we stay together and do something, or however it is, or maybe we split up. Guiding principle number 1 is that relationship stays intact. Guiding principle number 2, depending on which way the conversations are going, is that it's fair for Nick or it's fair for me. And then guiding principle number 3 is it's fair for Matt or it's fair for Nick. So it's friendship, fairness for Nick, fairness for Matt, in that order. With all of our business discussions. And we pride ourselves on being able to look each other in the face and say what we really think, and have an open and real, awkward and onward, healthy conflict. In our one-to-one meetings, we always create a space called healthy conflict. So it's the subject is, what am I not saying that needs to be said?
All the things you just reeled off there, all the things that you talked about earlier that you didn't have, and the ability to have when you were younger. There is a saying, Matt, never work with friends and family. You've done both. And do you think your work now with a friend has been informed by the learning that you had from working with family? And what spin would you put on that saying?
Well, I think, look, firstly, I don't agree with the saying. It's rare for me just to flat out disagree with anything. But I go, like, who said it? Why? What's your reason? What's your evidence? Because I can give probably multiple, and I'm sure you could, examples of where working with friends and families work really well. Like, how about the Barclay brothers? I've got millions that I could think of. I could look back and look at some of the successes my brother and I have had together in business, pulled off an amazing deal despite some of the challenges. So, look, it's a challenging saying to say it. What I would say is, if you can take the view that if 2 human beings that are in business together, or even if you're living together or doing business together or whatever, it's all about values alignment. It's if your values are aligned, then it doesn't matter who you are. You could be a different race, creed, colour, sexuality. You could be from another planet. But if your habitual natural behaviour patterns are aligned, your modus operandi, the way you make decisions, the way you operate, like if those are aligned, you haven't got a problem. Like Nick and I have got 7 core values. We love people. We're dynamic and daring. They're called LAGDABs. We get results. We're open and real. We bring energy and fun. We practice self-awareness and humility. We have those things in common, whether you're friends. Like I always say, if you're friends or family, it's even more of a reason to get your values clear, to be clear on your mission, your purpose, to have transparency and openness. Like, it's even more of an opportunity to get it right, and to co-create an environment where people can thrive.
You've mentioned your family quite a few times during this conversation, so it's obviously important to you. How did you and your wife meet?
Well, it's interesting because Kerry and I, again, we're completely opposites in many, many ways. We're from the same village. I knew a dad. I used to play football with a dad. We went to the same school together, but I was older than her. So we got lots of mutual friends, but we were never in the same friendship group. And I actually met her in a nightclub in Birmingham called the Sobar on the 22nd of March, which is my best mate's birthday, which is why I remember it. And 22nd of March actually is a very significant day for me and Kerry. We moved into our first house. We met. We got engaged. We moved into our last house. Like, we've had loads of things happen on that day. It's interesting, actually. We were both going through a very difficult time in our private lives at that moment in time. And our mutual friends, I think, did a bit of matchmaking. My two best mates were like, we're going uptown on Saturday night. And I was like, nah, I'm out. I don't want to go uptown. Just sit me in the cricket club and in the social, have a few beers. I was in that, like, I was not in a good space. And unbeknown to me, Kerry was actually going through a really challenging time, and her best mates were going, look, because it was a mutual friend's birthday, Ben Petty, his name is. He's the assistant manager of Birmingham City Football Club, great friend of mine. And he was the reason why we got together. It was his birthday, and our mutual friends both got us in the same room, and neither of us wanted to be there. So, like, for me, it was pretty much love at first sight. I'd like to think it was the same for Kerry, but I'm not sure it is. But yeah, like, honestly, I remember saying to Kez, I know you, don't I? I said, can I buy you a drink? And she went, well, you'll have to get my mates one as well. I was like, yeah, fine. And that was it, that was it. So she's such a gracious person, and she's got real strength, real power, but also we're aligned on values. We both had similar childhoods in many respects, some trauma and lots of happiness as well. And we share big values around, like, openness and family. Family is big for us, and trust between each other. So she's I couldn't do any of what I'm doing now without Kerry's support, and it's the number one relationship, after yourself, isn't it, that you got to work on a long-term life partner, and she's an incredible person, actually.
How would you? I just got to go with the questions that come into my head as people are talking. So how would you describe your parenting style in light of your your own experience of being parented?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, look, I think, when you've got kids, we've got two kids. We're blessed, and everybody has their own style, don't they? And I think what's nice is Kerry and I are opposites. And look, Kerry is definitely the one. She works with children, so Kerry's the one that she has rules, she has routines, disciplines. She's brilliant at that. And our children, in my view, they love some structure. They love some safe. They love to feel safe. They need a routine. I'll give you an example. We took my eldest daughter, Olivia, swimming when she was little. We really wanted her to be safe in the water. And she hated it. Like, the first few times, she hated it. She was crying. She wouldn't do it. She was embarrassed. She wouldn't go near the swimming instructor, Andy, who's a mate of mine. And I was like, let's just leave and go and do horse riding. And that was I was like, God, I don't want to put her through this. And my wife said to me, no, shut up. Like, stop talking. No. What kind of person are we going to have when she's older if you teach her that if she's having a bad time or finding it difficult, she can just give up? And I remember thinking, like, get off your high horse, darling, But she was so right. She was so right. And to this day, Kerry is get up on time, get out of bed, get off your mobile phone, get out. And both my children now have got that structure, which I didn't bring. So the bit that I bring is very much like, come on, let's go and have a swing. Come on, let's go swimming. Come on, let's jump on the bikes. Come on, let's go and have a bit of dinner. But I could take both my girls to the local pub. I love my local pub. It's got an open fire and, lovely local people and all that. And we can have a game of Scrabble in the bar and or dominoes, just off the cuff. And the girls have a lemonade. I'll have a quick pint. Come up. So I'd probably bring that to it, whereas Kerry brings that sort of structure and discipline and safety and routine and politeness and manners. So I think, again, the two styles probably work. They work for us anyway. I'm sure other people go, we're crap, and that's fine. But yeah, so it works for us. And I think, one of the things that we're really proud of with our children, and it's not a fluke, but if you were sat in my front room now both of my children could hold a conversation with you. They could ask you a few questions. Like my little girl will say, "What kind of day have you had? Who have you been with? Tell me some of the things you've been doing." She's 11. Like, she's got great conversation. We go out for dinners together. We take Nick and Nat and their children and my wife and me and our children. Our favourite restaurant is in the centre of Birmingham. It's called Fumo. It's Italian tapas. And we've got to know the owners and stuff. And we go there and there's a circular table, no mobile phones. I get a basket. You're going to put your phone in the basket. The last time we went, we were there sat for 5 hours. And we had multiple people come over to us and say, it is so nice to see children laughing and communicating and talking. And like, people actually come over and say that. We're not doing it for that. But that's not, that's regularly is something that people notice about us and our kids. So I don't want to sit here preaching because we get loads wrong and we're flawed like every other parent. We're just doing our best, right? But yeah, so that's something that we wanted to give our children. Don't get me wrong, they're all over roadblocks and all the other things as well. But we wanted to teach them. We go out for dinner with our neighbours. We'll go to the local community centre. If my children go to a restaurant, they can order their own food. If they go to the local shop, like I've taken them to the rugby club since they were little to give them exposure to men. I've got 2 girls. So I wanted them to know what a good man looks like and what a not so good man looks like. And I wanted them to be aware. I wanted them to be able to order a drink or food, like the independence and things that we had when we were kids before mobile phones. So it isn't easy, The average age of children looking at porn is 9 years old, because they can just go on here and the older ones are on it and they pass it on to the younger ones. So, it isn't easy, is it, being a parent and navigating this stuff?
I've got an eye on the time, Matt. It's a shame that we're kind of getting to the point where we need to start thinking about putting a bow around the conversation. Just one other thought that came to me is that it seems to me that, and I'm going to do in air quotes again, the success that you've had in your life, all the different stages, has come through embracing opposites. You talked about how you and your brother and your dad are all very different strengths, but there's opposites there, which obviously resulted in significant success there. Talked about Nick, and there's opposites there, and you talked about your relationship with your wife. There's opposites. I think there's something. I'm just reflecting on it, that there's something to be learned there about not fearing what's different, but embracing it. And it's in that exploring how the opposites can complement each other that exciting stuff happens.
Well, it's interesting as well that the brain, as I've learned more and more about the brain, is absolutely loves opposites. It's really attractive thing for the brain to think about what's opposite to what it's doing. I mean, you just think about everything that we do in our lives. It's all opposites. Left brain, left foot, right foot. Up, down, in, out, black or white, hot or cold. Like everything, just everything you do is it's got an opposite in it. It's go forwards or backwards. It's just constant opposites. So I've really been on a journey since 2015 to look at what's opposite to everything I'm doing, and to just be a bit more curious about what the alternative is. I'll tell you a great game that I don't know if you've ever played this. It feels really strange, and the first few times you play it, the people around you are normally really rude. They just can't help it. So the game is called the Yes Game. Play with your best mate or your life partner or somebody close to you. I just go, right, in the next 60 seconds, you can ask me any question. And obviously we won't, but the answer, I have to say yes. Then it normally always start off like something really rude and vulgar and whatever. And you'll notice somebody will say something like, would you suck my toe? And you just have to say yes. And the thing is that when somebody says something that you don't want to do, you can feel your normal defensive patterns, the social norms that you've wrapped around your throat, of the weeds of normality, the almost internal censorship we put on ourselves, how we don't say what we really think. Think about how many times in a day you don't say what you really think. It's fucking constant. It's nearly everything. And also, can you imagine if you just said what you really thought about everybody all the time?
How freeing would that be?
Well, you'd be in prison.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
What's the opposite? But in some, psychologically, you'd be free.
But you'd be in prison for sure, right? So, you just would. But the point is, if you play the Yes Game, you can feel your central nervous system, your musculoskeletal system. You can even feel the non-physical part of you, like the spiritual bit, think, oh, I can't say yes to that. You can feel it. It's really difficult when you first start doing it. And of course, the closer you are to people, the more vulgar they get. And the more vulgar they get, you have to say yes. So like it's just 60 seconds, the yes game. And as you get better at it, you can't get got eventually, and it's fine. But you see, our systems defend all the time. Our systems, our social norms, our cultural wet cloaks. It's
To keep us safe.
well, there's two of us in there, right? And the other one is keeping you safe all the time. It's on high alert. It's like, what happens if it goes wrong? What happens if you do this? What happens if you do that? So it's like my dad. It's my dad. My dad just thinks the bad thing and then says it. Like, I was saying to my dad, I think we should invest in a piece of land. And he'll go, fucking nightmare. What happens if the builder goes bust? Just says it out loud. Like, he doesn't say, that's a good idea. Let's think about how that could work. And then let's think about some of the problems. He can't do that. Just goes, no, it'll go wrong. And whereas my brother would just go, yeah, it'll go right. And then what I've learned is actually it's good to play. If you invest and it goes well, what does that look like? If you invest and it goes wrong, what does that look like? If you don't invest and you miss out, what does that look like? If you do invest and you miss it, like, you've got to play it all out and then make an informed decision. But yeah, look, I think going back to what I was saying, I mean, give the yes game a go. One of the things that happens, right, is you start to realise that you have people around you as well that also say no a lot. That they're just constantly saying no. So one of the things that I've learned probably about 2.5, 3 years ago now was actually quite a shocking thing to learn. It really was quite a shocking thing to learn, which was I used to think that the people closest to me had genuinely got my best interests at heart, but they haven't. The problem is they've actually only got their own best interests at heart. And you go, fucking hell, hang on a minute. And you start to play, when you realise that is a reality, start to think about some of the times in your life where you've had a good idea. And you've got to be careful who you share good ideas with, because, like, there are people who just literally take that good idea and fucking quash it, like, without even exploring it. They don't even try the dress on and see if it fits. They just go, that won't fit, put it down.
That's a great callback, by the way.
Yeah, and you go, oh shit. And sometimes these naysayers are there's a lot of them, and they're closer than you think. And they're consistent with, no, it's not going to work. Have you thought about that? Why would you do that? Oh, that might go wrong. And they're the ones you've got to watch out for. And then you've got to watch out for the one inside you that only says no. Because if you switch off your possibilities and it becomes your sort of natural style to not look for what's possible. I'll give you a few examples of this. I hear this in business all the time. Classic at the moment, as we record this, the UK, we've had a budget, right? So there are two types of people with that budget. There's the one, I'm fucked. Oh my gosh, it's going to be an absolute disaster. Like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. Like, we might as well just pack it all up. And then there's the other one that goes, in the grand scheme of things, it'll just about wash its own face. I might pay a bit more there, but I get a bit back over here. And you know what? I'm going to crack on and I'm going to work towards my dreams and my goals. And whoever is His Majesty King Charles III's exchequer, that's out of my hands. I get my vote every 4 years. I've had my vote. I'm going to crack on. Like, there isn't an in-between, actually. There's either that one or that one. And the one over here is me. I'm like, look, I can't really control, other than my vote, what does or doesn't happen. But what I can control is what I'm going to focus on. So control the controllables, focus on the focusables, put your energy where you can, move towards people that you can involve, that can co-create something new and special and magic, and avoid the ones that don't. So I just invite the listener, you, me, right now, to go, who do I need to get rid of in my life? Not physically, but who do I need to stop listening to? And it could be your internal ego making assumptions and presumptions. Here's a presumption. Now we've had the new budget, the next 5 years is going to be a fucking disaster. Like, you can own that if you want and make it your reality. Or you can go, right, I've had a new budget and the next 5 years is going to be fucking amazing. I am going to have the best 5 years I've ever had, budget or not. And that's a presumption internal that it's a choice. You get to hang on to which you choose what you want to go with. You either go with fear and presumption or hope and possibility. And look, Peter Wintermore, my uncle, taught me this great thing when he was dying. He said, human beings need hope to cope. And the context was, he was like, I said, Peter, despite this illness, your energy is amazing. He went, human beings need hope to cope. And he believed he was going to make it. So, that's the choice that you get. And all I'd say to people is just be careful of the people around you that are in constant fear, constant blame, switch everything off. I'm not saying be kamikaze. I'm not saying don't listen to fair and reasonable advice. But I am saying, like, if you just keep listening to all the things that are going to go wrong and you keep switching it all off, you're going to have a painful life.
Absolutely true. Wise advice towards the end of our conversation. In this conversation, we have absolutely firmly established that you have lived a non-straight line life. So
For sure.
you passed the test. Well done. And if there's one certainty about your life going forward, it's also almost certainly going to be not a straight line. You've mentioned a couple of times about your strength of vision. What is that vision? What is pulling you forward, straight line or otherwise?
Yeah, I think, well, firstly, the only thing that's certain is that it's going to be uncertain. Like, the future doesn't exist. Like, now is the end of the past and now is the start of the future. So it's, I always say about the future, and this is not a preach, this is just something I say and something I really, really try. Don't like the word try, but practice. I do practice this. I go, in the future that doesn't exist yet, you might as well create a beautiful vision and think like a child. Because if you don't, you're only going to think bad things, and we move away from bad things. We move towards happy things. So, like, have a nice, big, fat, juicy vision of something positive in the future. You don't have to have one, you can have multiple. See, that was another mistake I made for years, thinking that I had to find my purpose. What a load of bollocks. It's like, how can a human being only have one purpose on this planet? Like, and I've realised I've got 6. I haven't got one, I've got 6 that I focus on all the time, and that just takes all the pressure off. So a vision of the future is the same. Like, why does it have to just be one? The one thing's for sure is no one's getting out alive. And, the science says the last 10 years is decline and pain. So you go, well, when am I going to die? What am I working to? And if it's 30 years, you're going to be asleep for 10 of them, and you won't be at work for another 10. So you've got 10 years left at work if you've got 30 years left. So I think none of this really bears thinking about. What is true to me is having a life vision, long-term vision, with 5-year increments is a good way of thinking about it. And that's certainly my wife and I, as we speak, are working on, with the help of my coach, Jeff. Okay, what does 50 years look like? Well, I'll be 97. What does 40 years look like? What does 30 years look like? What does 10 years look like? And then what are the 5-year increments? And then what are you doing in the moment that really drives happiness? And my 6 purposes are: at work, we develop people. So if I'm working with an individual, the number one thing I'm looking for is for them to be making progress that's measurable in their world and in their words. And like, when we see someone making a measurable improvement internally or externally, I'm living my purpose at work. And I've got 5 outside of work. I'm a loving human being. I'm an ambassador for nature. I'm committed to serving others. I'm a devoted husband and father. I'm a teacher. I go, if I can weave those 6 things into my diary, into my time in the future that doesn't exist yet, and live them as often as possible, then I can cope against bouts of depression, low moments, high moments, mid moments, panic attacks, emotional eating disorders, like all of the things that are part of me and come and go. Some of the wins, some of the highs, some of the lows. Like, if I can weave some of that stuff in at any one time, I'm winning.
What a beautiful way to finish what for me has been a beautiful conversation. Get inspired by it, Matt. Thanks so much for sharing your non-straight line journey with us. There is a couple of questions I ask all my guests at the end. So one question is, how can the listener and I help you the most right now?
The thing that would make me happier than anything else is quite a simple thing, actually. And that is for the listener and you to make a commitment each day to find somebody close to you and acknowledge them. Tell them you love them. Acknowledge something you've noticed about what they've done. A pat on the back, an encouraging word, a moment of external love. I saw something you did online the other day. I thought it was amazing. Well done. Like, just an encouraging word. I think if we can bring that right now, I just hear so much negativity, so much fear, so many problems. Keir Starmer, Boris Johnson, Trump, Biden, Harris, COVID, budgets, Rachel Reeves, Putin, Ukraine, and all of those things are serious and in many cases terrible events. And in amongst all that, we've got a role to play as individuals while we're alive, while our heart's beating, to find little moments of happiness. You know, I was watching something the other day, a documentary. It was a documentary in Gaza. It doesn't matter what people think, it's awful, whatever. And there was like death and destruction and maiming and all kinds of horrible things. And I really don't, I'm not taking sides. I'm just saying, this is what I was watching. And then there was just two little kids playing a little game with a ball, smiling. And I was like, I go, if we could all find little moments amongst it all of happiness, of love, of peacefulness, of an encouraging word, anything like that, I think, that'd be good.
Yeah. It says so much about you as a human, Matt, that when I asked you how we can help you, that your immediate response was how you can help the world. And I see you live in your purpose there, developing people, because that is going to both develop the person that's acknowledging and the person that's being acknowledged.
Thank you.
Being true to purpose. The last question is, whose non-straight line journey do you want to hear? A new episode of Not a Straight Line podcast drops down onto your app and you see, Not a Straight Line conversation with so-and-so.
Yeah, I think if you could get my coach, Jeff Mask, onto your podcast,
okay,
you won't be disappointed.
He's already said that he'll come on, so
yeah,
that's great. Good to have that seconded. Well, Matt, it just remains for me to say for myself and on behalf of the listener as well, thank you so much for sharing a non-straight line journey with us. Really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode of Not a Straight Line. If this conversation helped to reorient your internal compass or inspired you in any way, please let us know by heading to podcast.notastraightline.life/rate and leave a rating and review. Thanks as always to Matthew Bliss of MB Podcast Services for his exquisite engineering of this episode. If you'd like him to help you with your podcast, contact details are in the show notes. And if you'd like to be a guest on the show, or there's someone whose non-straight line journey you'd just love to hear, then please visit podcast.notastraightline.life/guest. Thanks for being here with me, and I'll see you next week for another amazing, deep, inspiring non-straight line journey. Love you.